Well, I'm working on a building. It's a true foundation. Holding up a blood-stained banner for my Lord. Well, I never get tired of working on a building. I'm going up to heaven, Lord, to get my rewards. Well, I'm working on a building. It's a Holy Ghost building. Holding up a blood-stained banner for my Lord. Well, I never get tired of working on a building. I'm going up to heaven, Lord, to get my reward. Well, I'm working on a building. It's a faith foundation. Holding up a blood-stained banner for my Lord. Well, I never get tired of working on a building. I'm going up to heaven, Lord, to get my reward. Well, I'm working on a building. It's a faith foundation. Holding up a blood-stained banner for my Lord. Well, I never get tired of working on a building. I'm going up to heaven, Lord, to get my reward. I'm going up to heaven, Lord, to get my reward. If that is love and see.
He left the splendor of heaven, knowing his destiny
Was a lonely hill on Golgotha,
where he laid down his life for me.
If that isn't love, then the ocean is dry. There's no stars in the sky, and the sparrow can fly. If that isn't love, then heaven is our bid. There's no feeling like this if that isn't love.
Even in death, he remembered
The thief hanging by his side.
He's full with love and compassion.
Then he took him to paradise. If that isn't love, then the ocean is dry. There's no stars in the sky, and the sparrow can fly. If that isn't love, then heaven is all mid. There's no feeling like this if that isn't love. There's no feeling like this if that isn't love.
Great, thank you everybody. You can take your seats now. I hope everybody has their tablets with them because it's going to be those kinds of lessons. I do want to say welcome to all that are here in the chapel and all those are online, and in faith all those who may be watching on archives in the future. This is the Children of the Free Church Ministry, We gather here every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for the teaching. We're still working on our new website, coming soon. Now, last week we started a series on the Great Pyramid in Egypt by laying down some of the facts about its construction and its placement. We may be repeating some of the information tonight, but that's unavoidable, and in some senses it's necessary because you need to remember some of these things when we start getting more heavily into the teaching. You need to have that firm foundation. Now, of all the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid is the only one that's still standing. And by far, it's the oldest of the 7 wonders. And that includes the Great Pyramid. They say was built in 2500 BC. We don't know. It could be 4,000, could be 25,000 plus BC. Then there was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which was built in 600 BC. The Temple of Artemis, which was built, or Artemis, was built in 550 BC. The statue of Zeus, which was built in 435 BC. The mausoleum at, I think it's Mausolea, was built in 351 BC. The Colossus of Rhodes was built in 280 BC, and the lighthouse at Alexandria was built at 280 BC. These are all the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Pyramid, as I said before, at 2500 BC is by far the oldest and is still standing today. Now, I want you to, I was going to say put flesh and blood on it, and I kind of mean that in a sense that I want you to picture this because it's really stone. But put flesh and blood on this and picture this in your mind. When the pyramid was finished, when they were done with it, it was an all-white 48-story skyscraper. It was covered in Tura limestone casing stones that were polished and perfect. Optical precision, like everything else, it was completely smooth. It was not a big pile of blocks that you see today. We understand that. You never get to see it that way, but I want you to understand that it was that way for a very long time. Smooth, white. And it was snow white and could be seen 100 miles away just by its reflection. And in the case of the gold capstone that was intended to be put on top of it, would have been seen from outer space like a giant diamond on the earth. The casing stones have all been removed by local Arabs. Surprised? Anybody?
No.
To build their mosques. And all that's left of it is its core masonry. But even that's enough to build 30 Empire State Buildings. And in any case, the inner passages, passageways, and the chambers are intact, as well as most of its scientific knowledge is still intact, even though they've taken the coverings off of it. Now, the purpose of most of our teaching here, just in general, is to show God is in control, God is in charge, and that God has a plan for the ages. We've shown in God's message in the stars, which we'll probably teach again as well soon, that He's in control, obviously. We've shown that recently in the teaching on the lost tribes, I think, in quite a bit of detail. You don't do that kind of movement, everything work out perfect without, divine intervention. And now we're going to be teaching God's message in stone, the Great Pyramid that's in Egypt. Now the Great Pyramid is not like the other pyramids. I want to emphasize that because when you see these ancient astronauts programs and everything that they have on TV nowadays, they will almost always say the Great Pyramids, plural, or they refer to the pyramids. They're not all the same. This one is different. Not like the other pyramids. It's not a tomb. Never was a tomb. And like I said, never was a tomb, and it's not built by Cheops, which is the Greek name for where they say built it. It was not built by Khufu, which is the Egyptian name of who they said built it. Those names were placed in there in the pyramid by forgery by Colonel Howard Weiss, which will explain to you the details of the proof of the forgery later on. In actuality, it's the only pyramid that has no writing, no hieroglyphics, no signs, nothing in it. It's just itself. And when you start taking directions and measurements, starts having meaning. And like I said, we'll get back to that statement about the Weiss forgery. It's not known with certainty who built it, but whoever it was pretty smart. And in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they themselves do call it the Pillar of Enoch. Why do you suppose that is? When was it built? We don't know. Could be anywhere from 4,000 to 25,000 years or more ago. How it was built? We don't know. We do know it was not 100,000 Stone Age cavemen that put it together over a 20-year period. Why was it built? It's a witness to God. So throughout the eons of time, he's going to be able to say, I told you so. Built by whom? Well, like I said, we don't know for certain. But one of the greatest candidates is Enoch. And if you remember that God did take Enoch, Enoch never saw death. God took him because he pleased God. And we're going to list again some of the construction and placement features and knowledge is contained, which is incredible in and of itself. Then, as the teaching goes on, we're going to have revelation of the passages, the timelines, the future history that's in there, and prophecy that are beyond belief and only explainable by divine intervention. Way back in the Middle Ages, in the year 820 AD, by the way, about 1200 years ago, an Arab by the name of Al-Mamun, who was a caliph, no less, came to the Great Pyramid with an army of workers and an army of scientists to open up the Great Pyramid. They thought for the first time. There is evidence to believe that it's been gotten into more than once before, but they thought they were opening it for the first time. They were looking for treasure for the most part. And they were looking for any kind of secret knowledge as well, but mostly they were looking for treasure. And like I said before, put flesh and blood on it. In the desert heat, we tend to ignore these things. Just think of a big block of stone out there. In the desert heat, using fire and vinegar and battering rams, they would heat up the stones, then they'd throw vinegar on it, and they would crack the stones, and they would get battering rams and batter what was left out of the way. They began digging on the center of the north face of the pyramid. At least they had the right side of the pyramid. And either that was by either legend or by some kind of secret knowledge. But they started on the 7th course on the north face of the pyramid. And still today, that hole that Al-Mamun made is still the tourists' entrance to the pyramid instead of the real entrance, which is there and has been there for up to 25,000 years or more. The actual door is on the north face, but it's 286.1 inches to the left. And I want to jot that number down somewhere because it's going to keep showing up, and it's important later on in the teaching. It won't mean anything to you now. But it was 286.1 inches off to the left, and that's about 24 feet. And up on the 10th course, that's where the actual entrance is. So it's on the 10th course. It's 286.1 inches off center, where the real entrance is for the pyramid. And we'll teach more on that later on. But after several weeks of this brutal work of blasting and vinegar and hot stones and battering, they made it in only about 30 meters, which is about 100 feet, somewhere around 100 feet, into the side of the pyramid. And then while they were working there doing their damage, they heard something heavy fall off to their left inside the pyramid. So they adjusted and they turned their battering and digging towards the left to try and discover what that was. And they blasted another 24 feet in, like I was saying, and they burst into a descending passageway and put flesh and blood on it, stifling hot, dark, small passage about 4 feet wide, going down, down, down into the blackness of the pyramid. That's what they're seeing when they go there, when they got in that part. And then they found a stone in the nearby vicinity there that was what they heard fall, and it was a blockage of an upward passageway, almost like a doorway to an upward passageway that had fallen down. So they found not only this descending passageway about 4 feet wide, they found a passage going upward as well. It was about the same size, about 4 feet wide. So the downward passage here, steep, slippery, going down into the pyramid. This other one was blocked, the upward one was blocked a little way in by a granite block. Now granite's a lot harder than limestone. So they tried to go through the block, but they couldn't do it, so they dug around the block. And they came on the other side of the block, and there was another section of the ascending passageway, and on a second block, a granite plug plugging that way of going any further. So they repeated the same operation again. They dug around it, came on the other side, another space, and they found a third granite plug inside the passage, blocking the way up, and eventually dug around that as well. Now we're going to find out as we do our teaching, when we start getting into symbolism and prophecy and everything else that's going on, that The number 3 is what? It's divine manifestation. What's divine manifestation? It's God showing himself, right? God's manifestation showing himself. And there's 3 granite plugs in this passage. And what that means to me, and you'll see and agree as we go on with the studying, you can't go this way. All right? It'll become evident as to why as we go on with the teaching, but there was these blockages of the passageway. Meanwhile, they're exploring the downward passage, a descending passage. And they found it filled with thousands of bats, 3 different species of bats, and about 2 feet of bat droppings on the floor, and other vermin. They don't say what, but there are other accounts that will say there was snakes, and I believe scorpions as well. And this downward passage. I mean, what some people won't do for the possibility of treasure sounds pretty creepy and pretty scary to me. You're in this big giant solid rock, and there's this little tube going down into the blackness, or another one that's blocked going in the other direction. Now, we need to recap some of the physical features of the construction and the placement of the pyramid so you can fully appreciate the exploration and the discovery of the timelines and the prophecies that we'll be getting into as we continue the teaching. Now, we already know this, but it was placed on the top of a flat subterranean mountain called the Giza Plateau. The top of the mountain has been flattened and sockets dug into it for the pyramid to fit into. That in and of itself is a big enough feat to say 100,000 cavemen didn't do this. There were sockets there for stability of the building itself. It's the only place on Earth that could hold that massive a weight. So it's in the center of the largest landmass on Earth. It's comprised of 2.3 million limestone blocks. I mean, just the number itself is hard to accept and fathom. 2.3 million limestone blocks weighing from 70 to 90 tons. They've done calculations before where they figured this army of Stone Age cavemen would have to be putting a stone in like every so many minutes, you know, and it's like, no, that's not going to happen. But anyway, it's comprised of 2.3 million limestone blocks. The stones are cut with optical precision, which we went over last week. Surfaces as large as 35 square feet without any more than 1/50th of an inch of variation. I think I said 150th of an inch last time. It was 50th of an inch. And that's pretty small. You take an inch and divide it in half, and divide that in half, but go all the way down, divide it into a 50th part of that. There's no wavering in that 35 square feet of more than 1/50th of an inch. And yes, it's true, you cannot stick a business card in there. That's how flat the joints are. It's cemented with the cement that's been somehow poured vertically into these joints, that the composition of which cannot be duplicated today, yet it is so strong that the stone will break before the cement breaks. I showed everybody in here pictures earlier. I'm going to try and get some pictures we can put up on the internet maybe next week that we can refer to, because you need to have an appreciation that this edifice is almost a solid block of stone, and in it are passageways and chambers that were built into it. You have to appreciate that fact. They didn't put the whole thing there and then dig out passageways. They built it with the passageways in it. Repeating, there's enough material to build 30 Empire State Buildings in there. It's positioned on the cardinal points of the compass, and it's facing true north, which you only get by shooting a line out into space from the axis of the Earth, and it hits one of a series of stars that rotate through what they call the procession of the equinoxes out there in heaven, and that's true north, not magnetic north. Magnetic north can be really way off. The planet could even be upside down and north would be on the bottom of the planet. But true north is out there in space. And that's where this northern face is aligned to. If you get real technical, if you want to be a sharpshooter, you'll find out that it really isn't pointing at true north. But if you want to get real sharp, then you go back and you figure out the movement of the continents, and you figure out when it was set there before the continents moved, it was pointing right on true north. Covered, like I said before, with polished white Tura limestones, could be seen from space. By the way, you're going to trip out on this. How many white Tura limestones do you think covered the face of the pyramid? 144,000. How they figured that out, we'll know someday. There's no capstone on the pyramid. There's a reason for that. The way it's built, it comes out, guess what, 286.1 pyramid inches off when you get up to the top because of the way it's built on purpose. There's a reason for that relating to human error and mankind being off. But we'll get into the details of that later on as we teach. And contained within this structure, its positioning and its measurements are the distance from the Earth to the Sun, 93 million miles, which was just calculated in modern times in the pyramid 4,000 years ago. In the pyramid, you find the mean density of the Earth, which was not known until modern times in the pyramid 4,000 years ago. And they just recently figured it out. The natural curvature and circumference of the Earth is within the numbers in the pyramid. Check this one out. The average land or Earth's crust that's above sea level. Now mind you, you would have to survey the whole Earth in order to get this number. 4,000 years ago is in the pyramid, 455 feet. The all 3 years, the solar year, the sidereal year, and the anomalistic year are contained within measurements of the pyramid. They're all 365 plus certain decimals. By the way, the number 365 shows up in the Great Pyramid over and over and over again, not just in the years I'm telling you about. You'll see that as we go along. And I just named 3. So, well, it just so happens that Enoch lived 365 years. In the king's chamber is maintained 24/7, the ideal temperature to maintain human life. 68 degrees, never varies. They discovered pi, where you get pi r squared. You are able to figure out the circumference of any circle. If you have the radius and multiply it times pi and square the number, you come out to the circumference of any circle. They just discovered that in modern times. It's already built into the pyramid. And like I said before, it's standing in the exact center of the Earth's landmass. In the pyramid is something that's called the golden section. All art, engineering, and architecture is based on the golden section. On the pyramid, you'll find the Christ angle, where if you come off the face of the pyramid to a certain angle, it shoots a line that if you follow it out across the countryside, goes right straight through Jordan and winds up right directly in Bethlehem. Now, there's no construction company in the world today, you take Bechtel or Halliburton or anybody, that could build it 4,000 years later, regarding its placement and its alignment. Remember when we were teaching on the stars? And we were teaching how everything's moving towards you, some moving away from you, moving around you. Things are orbiting, spinning. The Earth is wobbling on its axis. The Earth is spinning about 1,000 miles an hour. It's orbiting the sun at about 1,000 miles a second. And like I said, everything, and it's wobbling on its axis, and everything else is moving. And somehow the construction of the pyramid hits a point in the precession of the equinoxes that comes once every 26,000 years. And the pyramid hits it right on target. And this structure, with no signs, no paintings, no writing, no hieroglyphics, no body, it's not a tomb. Methinks God's at work here, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's my message this time. It's offering time. What are we going to have for the offertory? One cloudy day. Yeah, we need that.
Oh, they tell me I'm a home burning on the sky. Oh, they tell me I'm a home far away. Oh, they tell me of a place where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an uncloudy day. Oh, they tell me of a king and his beauty rare. Oh,
Thank you. I don't know if I mentioned or not, but when I was telling you that it's not a tomb, even to the present time, there are scholars that are still searching for a secret tomb in the pyramid. Well, it ain't there. Now, next week, we're going to bear down and we're going to start teaching the timelines, the benchmark where the starting points are. It's going to be pointing out things like the flood, the Exodus, that are all inside the pyramid, and give you some dates of some importance next week. Now, there's a lot of scholars that compile this research, not the least of which is my mentor, Dr. Gene Scott. But besides him, I'm probably not going to be naming them, like there's Rawlinson and C. Piazzi Smith and Le Mesurier, and there's a whole bunch of them. But if I say something like it was discovered, just trust me. If you check the sources, you'll find out it was discovered. Okay? And we'll get together next week for that teaching. The reason I'm doing that is because it starts getting confusing when you start getting into the historical lives of these people. We just need to know the facts, just like Sergeant Friday used to say on Dragnet. Just give me the facts, you know. And that's what we need to know. And we're going to start with these astounding timelines next time. It goes all the way from an inch to a year in the pyramid, all the way down to an inch to a day. It can be that accurate inside there because it's going to have Christ's birth and death. It has Paul's ministry. It has everything you can imagine inside there cut into stone. The great increase of knowledge in the 1840s, I already mentioned, they're in stone. It also has things going the other direction, where it goes down to the pit. It winds up, that descending passage winds up in a pit. That sounds appropriate, doesn't it? An unfinished pit. And somewhere along the bottom passageway, in 1527, there's a change there. And that's exactly when Martin Luther broke off from the Catholic Church and started the Protestant Church, which should tell you something about the way God feels. Anyway, let's get our closing song done, because I'm going to want to keep going for a few hours if we don't. Keep on walking in faith.
Well, I searched and I searched for a road that led to glory. I wondered if I'd ever find my way. I was so dismayed, for the road it seemed so lonely. But then I heard a voice within me say, you've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, and only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord. Well, I faced and I faced, and the Lord, He gave me mercy. I faced and He brightened up my way. I sat down to rest, for my feet had grown so weary. But then I heard a voice within me say, you've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord. You've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord, walking in the light walking in the light of the Lord.